Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's morning blast. It is Liberation Day, also known as April the 2nd. Um, Welcome to today's morning blast. As usual, myself and Mr. Michael Brown will be jump starting your trading day with an explosive daily market preview. But before we do, let's get the legals out of the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed on this space session constitute trading or investment advice. You'd be insane to follow any investment or trading ideas that we come up with, or indeed that of the host, which is myself and Mr. Michael Brown. Good
Yes,
morning.
indeed.
Happy Liberation Day.
Indeed. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Happy Liberation Day. It's
What you
like
wearing?
Christmas. It's like Christmas morning, only 10 times worse, isn't it?
What you wearing on Liberation Day?
Just the usual, mate. Shirt and jeans.
Tux? Oh, okay.
No,
Shirt and jeans?
I'm,
You must be working from home.
no. I'll wear that in the office every day now. I do have a bar humbug hat kicking around at home somewhere though, so I might have
Oh,
to
no one is
dig,
surprised
dig
by
that
that.
one out later on.
Absolutely no one is surprised by that. Right, it's going to be a busy day for headlines, so I guess we better crack on.
It really is, yes. So let's get cracking. It was an interesting day yesterday with plenty of headlines as well. In terms of price action for financial markets, firstly, we were trading in relatively risk averse fashion amid ongoing tariff uncertainty. And then we traded in relatively risk on fashion amid that very same tariff related uncertainty. And this morning, we're trading with a risk off bias again amid that continuing tariff
Yo-yo
uncertainty.
markets.
Indeed, I jest slightly, but the price action at the moment is all very, very choppy, very, very indecisive. I think what we're really seeing is participants massively shortening their time frame, if indeed they are trading at all at this moment
Yes.
in time, because I think a lot of people have probably just got their book back to flat and gone, I'll come back on Thursday when we know what the hell is going on, or at least have half an idea of what
Yeah.
is going on. In any case, in terms of some of the scores on the doors yesterday, we did see the S&P 500 close higher by around about 0.4%, with the tech sector leading as the Nasdaq 100 rallied by around about 0.8%. Despite that, we saw gains across the Treasury curve, with the two-year yield falling around 4 basis points and the 10-year yield falling around 6 basis points, while the dollar in the FX space more broadly just continued to meander, with the greenback spending most of the day around the 104.25 mark, and other G10s trading in directionless fashion. In terms of commodities, gold and crude going nowhere particularly fast. Of course, we did have another barrage of headlines throughout the day yesterday on the trade front. Just to go through those in a somewhat coherent order before we move on. The first is it's important to note that the timing of President Trump's announcement today has changed. It will now be a press conference in the White House Rose Garden at 4 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time, 9 o'clock this evening here in London. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had previously said that these remarks would come at 3. So it seems that they have now been shifted after the market close. Is that a sign? I don't know. People are going to say it is. People are going to say
To
it's
to
not.
be honest, so on this, so I think wiser heads prevail because doing it within market opening hours is
Is mental.
was a bit fucking mental. But can you read through to that to what he's going to say? No, of course you can't, because let's be honest. When they decided to change the time, there's no way they finalised what the tariffs are going to be anyway. I wouldn't be
No.
surprised if they're still working them out now. So I wouldn't read too much into the time change, other than they've realised that doing it when the market opens just adds a
Yes.
load of volatility that they don't need.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree with that. I think the only complaint I would have is couldn't he have done it before the open rather than after the close? Because it's going to be a bloody long day now.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
guess
forgot
he's.
you're normally in bed with your cocoa at 9 o'clock, aren't
I know exactly. I'm going to have to
you?
figure out a way of staying up. Anyway, we also heard from the White House press secretary yesterday, who confirmed that the tariffs Trump announces will go into effect immediately after the press conference. Now, I don't know what the definition of immediately is here, whether it's literally as soon as he speaks or whether it's, the following day or whether it's midnight or whatever. But I think the nub of that is that it gives relatively limited room in terms of negotiation and people trying to immediately get out of any reciprocal tariffs that are imposed on their countries. In terms of what those measures may be, I mean, every man and his dog has had some sources reporting around this. The nub of all of this, again, and this is via CNBC, is that Trump appears to be evaluating three plans on what he may do in terms of these reciprocal tariffs. Now, the first would be a blanket 20% tariff on all imports into the United States. The second would be a tiered system where you effectively have three different tariff rates, and a country or a trading bloc ends up in one of those tiers, depending on what they charge the United States. And the third and final option would be individual country by country tariffs, which is kind of what Trump had promised previously when he said every country is going to get a number and that's going to be equivalent to what they charge us. According to these sources stories, blanket tariffs are seen as less likely than the other two options, with the ultimate goal being country specific measures. Although again, they stressed that no decision had yet been made. These reports came sort of midway through yesterday afternoon, so
Well,
kind of
this is
24 hours before Trump's meant to
yeah.
make
This
what could be the
this
biggest announcement of the presidency, and he hasn't made his mind up yet.
Well, this is it. This it was. I think it's the Wall Street Journal came out with this. What I'm doing air quotes again. No one can fucking see me, but yeah, I'm doing air quotes. Third option, which is, to be honest, I think is a bullish option when you consider that everyone was like fearing about 25% and all this stuff. Where this third option is that slightly less dramatic. Where they said
Mm.
like rumored to be less than the 20% universal rate for a basket of basket of countries. So
Yeah.
yeah, not only have they thrown this third option into the mix very late on, but it's very light on details. Well, details that we've got at least,
Mm.
which just all adds to the thesis that today's going to be an absolute shit show of headlines, contradictory headlines.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be anything orderly about it. And then best of all, as soon as he's talking, it's going to be headline risk everywhere because you're going to
Yeah.
have no doubt. I can picture it now. You're going to have headlines where I think my lads in the pool might need a pay rise after this week because it's going to be non-stop headlines from Trump, but full well that other countries have got their responses lined up if he says this,
Yep.
this, or this, and they're going to be announcing their kind of comments whilst he's probably still talking, because it's not going to be a short speech. He's going to go on for a long
No.
time. So
Yeah.
for a fact that whilst he's talking, we're going to have comments coming back from the countries affected. So it's going to be an absolute shit show. And quite frankly, I've never been happier not to be fully involved in trading markets anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. And of course, the other thing
Oh,
is that
stop it.
there's also the potential for Trump to contradict himself during his own
Oh,
remarks.
Mate, I'd be shocked if he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it is going to be an absolute shambles, I think. And to
Pub-
be completely honest, I was going to say, let's just throw it out there right now. Just don't trade. Just do not trade today. Because I
do you think
guarantee, even if you and I sat here right now and told you exactly what the tariffs are going to be, exactly when they're going to go into effect, and exactly what every other nation around the world is going to say in response, you will still lose money somehow.
I tell you what, I reckon if we asked politely, they'd put his speech on in Gibney's. We should
What?
just go down there.
Well, there we go. Worth a try, I suppose. Anyway, just to cover off a few other bits and bobs in terms of trade before we get on to what are frankly more interesting matters,
Yeah.
but not the markets care too much. Obviously, you mentioned those Wall Street Journal reports. Reuters yesterday were talking about pharma tariffs and saying that Trump is unlikely to specify anything on that front today. We also had the Washington Post. They were again just kind of rehashing the reports that everyone else had put out. Although there was a line in there saying that some officials within the administration believe that reciprocal tariffs plus the other tariffs that have been imposed on automobiles and things like that could raise revenue of up to $6 trillion,
With a
which
T.
sounds like a number they've just plucked out of thin air, to be completely honest with you. But
Hang on. Sorry, wasn't the other saving 600 million or billion?
yeah,
Sorry, billion.
I think they're
What?
making it up as they go along
Yeah, I
at this
think just
point.
anything with just start with a six, and the number of zeros is up to you.
Yeah, as long as it's a big number and it sounds impressive, crack on. Of course, focus will also, as you just alluded to, Ryan, very quickly after the announcement, or even perhaps during the announcement, turn to what comes next. I think markets are continuing to view this in the wrong way, in viewing this as kind of a one and done event risk akin
Ah,
to an
yeah, exactly.
FOMC, where once Trump's press conference is finished, we can all move on and everything will be fine and dandy. That's not the case. Obviously, you've still got the various other sectoral tariffs. You've got whether countries retaliate, whether they make concessions, whether they do what Keir Starmer's doing, which is just kind of sit back and take whatever Trump's going to throw at us.
Yeah.
Also, you've got the matter of Trump actually sees tariffs as basically his main tool to exert influence. So these reciprocal levies, whatever they're announced as, will probably end up getting turned up and turned down over time.
Yes.
If a country is making concessions and is friendly with the US, then that levy will be reduced or maybe even eliminated. But as soon as they do something that Trump doesn't like, then that levy will be increased once more. On that front, there were some comments, I should say, from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent overnight. Apparently, he has told Republican lawmakers that the tariffs announced today will be, and I quote here, the highest they will go, and countries can then take steps to bring them down.
Yeah. Wasn't the
People
quote?
getting
Wasn't the quote like this? This is the cap. Um.
Yeah, well, I was going to say people getting quite excited about this. I think that's probably misplaced for two reasons. You're right in saying that this would be the sort of cap, but I think what he's talking about there is just the reciprocal tariffs. There's
Yeah.
nothing to stop Trump going, "Oh, you're
Exactly.
buying Venezuelan crude, so here's a new tariff."
Oh no, this is it.
That's
And
not
we've
out of
already
the
seen him
question
use it.
still.
We've already seen him use like tariff on top of tariffs as well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I make you absolutely right. It's not saying that whatever we come up with today is that's the limit. This is the limit for this type of tariff.
Yes, so definitely don't get too
And
excited
if they
about that
throw
one.
the Uno plus two tariff card at you, you're going to double up.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
Oh,
The
stop
other
it.
thing, we're agreeing far too much.
Oh, I'm aroused.
Oh God, that no one needs that image this early in the morning. The
Moving on,
other,
quick.
I was going to say, yeah, very quickly moving on. The last thing that I'll mention on tariffs, because I think we've probably done this one to death at this point, is that it does seem to be the case that the administration are preparing for what they will do if/when all of this goes wrong. And the long and the short of that is they're going to throw Howard Lutnick under the bus. There has been a hell of a lot of media
Yes.
briefing over the last day or so, basically saying, and anyone who's been in markets for more than about 5 minutes will not be surprised by this, but apparently Lutnick hasn't got any friends in the White
Oh,
House.
shocker.
And people he works with would take special pleasure in blaming him. Yeah, I'm sure they would. There was a cracking line in a Politico article that said Liberation Day may conclude with Lutnick himself being liberated from his role as Commerce Secretary.
The ginger
But
stepchild of the Trump administration.
indeed, but it does seem, let's be honest, if this does cause, runaway inflation or a massive downside growth hit, Trump ain't going to take the blame for that himself, is he?
No,
He's going to try
absolutely.
and pin it on the chap who's actually signed all of these measures into law. And that
Exactly.
is, of course, the Commerce Secretary. Anyway, we've probably done trade and tariffs to death by this
Yeah.
point. There are a few other bits and bobs that I do need to cover off in terms of yesterday. We did have some notable data releases in the Eurozone. Headline inflation rose by 2.2% on an annual basis in March, down from the 2.3% we saw in February. Core prices, they rose by 2.4%, down from the 2.6% seen in Feb, and that is also the slowest pace since 2022. That plus services CPI coming down to 3.4%, and all of the downside growth risks facing the Eurozone should really, in my mind, cement the idea that the ECB deliver a cut in a fortnight's time.
Yeah.
The market only seeing around about a 75% chance of that action, though, as the hawks seem to be holding out against such a move. And in terms of data out of the States, we have the latest job openings figures. Openings fell to 7.57 million in February, down from a prior 7.74 million. We also had March's ISM manufacturing PMI survey, which was, to be honest with you, quite grim. The headline metric at 49, below expectations and back into contractionary territory. The subcomponents are also have a very strong whiff of stagflation about them, although I would caution they are probably skewed by all of this tariff front running that's going on.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the prices paid metric rising to its highest level since June 2022 at 69.4, while new orders sunk to their lowest since June of 2023, and the employment index at 44.7 was its second lowest level since the pandemic back in 2020, which perhaps bodes rather poorly for the March jobs data, which we have out on Friday. A few other bits and bobs, just lastly from me in terms of notable headlines from yesterday. You will recall we were speaking earlier in the week around this court case involving Marine Le Pen. She was obviously
Yes.
found guilty yesterday. She has appealed, and the French appeals court will hear that case, and they expect to rule on it by the middle of 2026. So the French acting with typical speed and efficiency that they
So
are
does
known for.
I just thought quickly on that because I did see that and I did chuckle to myself for the same reasons as you are. Um, does this mean that because it's gone to appeal, that technically she can still run, she can still lead the party? Surely she's, you know, I'm not sure. I've not read about how this
I
impacts. I've got
I
a
was going to say
feeling.
I don't actually know, to be completely
Yeah, I'm
honest
no
with you.
expert
I
on
don't.
criminal law, surprisingly. But I've got a funny feeling that this means all the kind of like, oh, she can't run for office and so I think all that's, until she's found
Sort of on
guilty. Yeah,
pause,
yeah,
effectively.
exactly that, exactly that. So if anyone knows, please write in on a postcard. You
Yeah,
know,
Zach, hurry up.
yeah, chop chop.
While our Swiss Alps correspondent gets on with that, last couple of bits and bobs from me. We heard news yesterday that the government they have launched a review of the ONS following all of the various data issues that they've been having. Apparently, this review is going to probe the culture and leadership of the organisation. I mean, why do you need a review? I can tell you that it's a shit show, and I've never even stepped foot in the office. Just go and fix it, please, rather than wasting time on that nonsense. A couple of other things. Lastly, one in the finance space, Visa and American Express, they are in competition to try and win Apple's credit card business away from Mastercard. Apparently, Visa have offered Apple $100 million
Yeah.
in order to switch Apple cards over to their payments network. The Wall Street Journal, this via Wall Street Journal sources, by the way, the Journal also noting that Apple is going to pick a network for the card before picking a banking partner. And last but by no means least, one for the tech-focused folk out there, Meta, they have apparently started work on second-generation glasses with dual screens that will have hand controls and apps. I mean, how big are those glasses going to be? If you've got two screens on them and a way of controlling them
I
with
was
your
I was
hands, you're going
gonna
to look wearing ski goggles on your face.
I'm getting images of Timmy Mallet and Wackaday, but you're far too young for that. One for the older UK crowd. Yeah.
I do get that, worryingly.
I'm not surprised actually. Cool.
Uh, but
That
yes,
that's
that
you done for
for the moment, that is all from me.
perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Brown. So just a few headlines from the overnight news roundup now. Obviously, check it out on Substack, Twitter, etc. But before I do, just a shout out to Zach who writes it. He's a jokes aside, he is a top boy. Also to Cam for the overnight for the crypto blast. Sorry. And his new venture, Institutional Fi, which will be will be doing the crypto blast at 1 p.m. UK time, and of course Angie Setzer for the grain market blast at 2:15 UK time.
It's
But
like a
cracking on
bloody
now with some
Oscars
headlines.
acceptance speech, this.
Yeah, I know. Tell me. I'd like to thank the Academy, the American Bar. Right. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to skip all the tariff stuff headlines because we just don't need that again, and I'm just going to be repeating what we said before. One thing I will note though is Musk made his big political spend in a Wisconsin Supreme Court race didn't pay off yesterday, raising questions about his political influence going forward. Basically, he was really shilling hard his candidate who lost. But two Florida congressional wins helped the GOP hold its House majority, but by a narrow margin than Trump's 2024 baseline. some further macro signals, other macro developments. TikTok deadline, Trump to be briefed Wednesday on a final proposal, letting TikTok continue operations with Oracle and Blackstone as potential investors. Senate agenda, the White House also meets with Senate Budget Committee Republicans and leader Fun. How do you pronounce it? Is it Fun? Fun? Answers
I think it's Thune, or
Foon.
but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, I'll go with Foon to draft a quote one big beautiful bill unquote for tax cuts, border security, and energy expansions. Fed Insight, Fed's Goolsby, sorry, warns broad tariffs risk reigniting inflation or slowing growth. Hedge funds are trimming equity exposure, anticipating market volatility. I mean, Goolsby. Um, yeah, I'm so glad he's working at the Fed. He's obviously very intelligent, being able to come up with that. No one else could have guessed that. Um, FX and bond markets, investors are cooling on the dollar, worried about US trade tensions. Options traders see a sustained Treasury rally if Trump's universal or partial tariffs shock markets. Global, oh no, uh, Judith Chalmers is telling me it's Foon, for what it's worth. There you go. Global snapshot. I won't read what else he's put. Meanwhile, outside the US, Canada vows no major retaliation on essential US goods, aiming to avoid job losses. Bank of Japan, Governor Ueda, says looming US tariffs could heavily hit global trade. Japan's jobless rate dipped, but manufacturers are anxious about further export orders. In China, the Caixin PMI outperformed at 51.2, though average home resale prices slipped. State mega banks see narrowing margins as savers multiply and the economy slows. Uh, EU officials. Oh, where's that? Sorry, I missed my page. EU officials fear Germany's big defence spending and potential US tariffs will escalate Eurozone borrowing costs. Smaller defence companies want a slice of the EU's emerging arms spree, so one to keep an eye on for your defence names. Geopolitical headlines now. Quick world affair check. China drills. The PLA held long-range live fire exercises in the East China Sea, citing readiness for a possible quote Taiwan contingency. And if I recall correctly, I think this live fire drill or this exercise is called something like Straight Thunder 2025. There you go. I'm just getting
That's not
tropic.
threatening at all, is it?
Yeah, I'm getting Tropic Thunder vibes, to be honest. US Middle East, Washington sent planes and ships to deter Iran, but insists no imminent conflict. I think I've read that, I'm sure I read last night that they sent a load of B 2 bombers to Diego Garcia, or whatever it is we're calling it nowadays. So
Yes,
one
they
again,
have. Actually, that's quite interesting. I was reading about that yesterday. They believe it's between 6 and 7 that have been sent there, which is somewhere around 50% of
got ya.
their active fleet. And basically, to cut a very long story short, the B 2 is the only type of aeroplane that the US have that can deliver a very specific
That's it.
bomb that can get to underground infrastructure, which is where the Iranians have buried all of their nuclear facilities.
Yeah, and
So
and
effectively, this is a threat going. We have something an hour's flight away from you that can completely wipe out
exactly
what you've
that.
been working on for God knows how long.
And and we do know that with Israel as well, with their red lines in terms of the amount of refined uranium that the Iranians have, because you only need so much to make a bomb, and so much to make X amount of bombs. And one thing, little fact for you on this one: the more refined uranium is, the easier it is to refine more of. So when you hit that critical mass, about I think it was over like 60% or something. Don't hold me to that. It then becomes very easy to refine it to weapons grade. It's getting it up
Yes.
to like that amount that takes all the power. Just a little sidebar on this. I did see one of these B 2s, pardon me, had to make an emergency landing in Hawaii, where it still is, because it had a pretty significant issue over the Pacific. I tell you what, if there's one place you don't want a big issue, is when you're in the middle of fucking nowhere over the Pacific. So thankfully they made it down to Hawaii. But anyway, moving on. Greenland. The White House is analysing the cost of controlling Greenland, surpassing an earlier approach to Denmark. Russia, Ukraine, both sides appear to make nice, quote, with President Trump, hoping to keep him on side as their ceasefire talks stall. Obviously, we've seen reports from both sides saying that drones are still flying. Trade missions, China, Xi, and EU leaders plan back to back visits to Vietnam, highlighting regional alliance building amidst US trade policy. And here some corporate developments, business and tech, AI and chips. Rumors are swirling that Nvidia's H20 or H20. Oh no, hang on. Sorry, I'm so sure this was a chip. I think
That
they just
means
mean,
water, doesn't it?
yeah, they mean Nvidia's water supply from China could be banned
Oh,
soon,
where's Tom Talks Cars?
stoking concerns over AI chip availability. I was like, the H20? What the hell is that? Intel's 18A, I don't know what element that is. Process enters risk production, targeting mass production in late 2025. GameStop reveals 1.48 billion with a B in Bitcoin buying power post convertible note sale, pivoting further into digital assets. The auto sector, US showrooms bustle as buyers try to beat a possible 25% tariff by next week, but dealers brace for a sales cliff. Toyota, Honda, and Nissan are reevaluating Indonesia's strategy facing Chinese EV competition. Big tech, aside from what Apple are getting paid by the likes of Visa for their credit card offering, Meta and Apple may face EU fines over alleged digital rules breaches fueling the US EU spat. On this one, and I know it's cracking on, but there's been a lot to talk about regarding this. Keir Starmer did bring out an idea yesterday that I actually think is not a bad one, and that is specifically reduce.
Oh,
I know, tell me about it. I am going to shower with bleach later on today. Basically saying they were going to target US big tech and reduce the taxes applied to them specifically. And I think this is a good thing to do because we know for a fact that Trump has the EU in his sights regarding the red tape that the EU and bureaucracy they're making US big tech go through. Also, the fines that they're putting their way, and also the digital taxes. So I think so Sama's playing quite a good one. He's playing to what he knows Trump wants to see, but bizarrely, he's actually putting himself in at odds with the EU, and that kind of goes against the
hmm.
whole Starmer in the EU, like all best buddies. So definitely want to keep an eye on there. SoftBank invests up to 40 billion will be in a for-profit unit for OpenAI. We chatted about this coming to fruition yesterday. Alibaba's new Qwen 2.5 Omni. I don't know what element that is either. AI model tops Hugging Face charts. Odds and
Tops
ends, but
what?
Hugging Face is a site for nerds. Ask Tom Talks Cards. Boeing
No,
slows
I'd rather not.
737 MAX production to 31 jets a month. Maersk warns EU shipping emissions plans might push the sector towards LNG. Aviva revised plans to cancel £450 million preference shares, risking investor backlash. And that's it from me. Obviously, as we know, all eyes on the tariffs. And back to Michael in the studio.
Good stuff. Thank you, Ryan. In terms
Thanks.
of today, then, much going on? Are we expecting a lot? Of course, it is Liberation Day.
Up.
All eyes, well, yeah, ideally. It is all eyes on that Trump Rose Garden press conference at 4 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern Time, 9 o'clock this evening here in London. As with yesterday, but on steroids, really. I think we're going to have a whole host of sources reporting in advance of that. So it is very much a case of headline watching throughout the day. One thing that is worth bearing in mind in terms of a scheduled event is Commerce Secretary Lutnick is due to be speaking on Bloomberg TV at 1:30 London time, 8:30 in the morning on the East Coast. Whether or not he trails anything that may be announced later, I've no idea. But nonetheless, that interview will, of course, be closely watched. But I think the general vibe among market participants today will be another very, very choppy session indeed, with conviction almost non-existent as we move towards that announcement later on. In terms of other things, because there are other things going on today, albeit with a relatively light economic calendar. On the data front, we do get the latest ADP employment figures out of the United States. That's due at 1:15, of course, with the employment change at 120,000, up from the 77,000 that we saw in February. Although, of course, this likely bears no relation whatsoever with Friday's official non-farm payrolls number. We also have the latest factory orders data out of the States today. Orders seen rising by 0.5% in February, down from the 1.7% pace that we saw in Jan. And in terms of central bank speakers, we are due to hear from the ECB's Lane, Holtzman, Escriva, and Schnabel throughout the day, as well as the Fed's Kugler, whose remarks do actually clash with those of President Trump. And no, I will not repeat what Zach said about them on his Twitter feed
Yeah.
earlier on. But apart
Bit
from
strong.
that, very strong and close to the wire remark from Zach earlier on, that is pretty much all. And it's going to be a very, very busy and quite grim day ahead, I would imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And no better time to follow me and you on X. I say me, it's not me posting. And also get on board to PIQ, because obviously we've got all the Twitter headlines on there, all the breaking news, all the business news channels. Everything's on there. You need to stay in touch with what's going on with the headline risk markets in general. I will be doing a Liberation Day offer at some point today. I'll post it off as soon as I've done this. I think we'll just, yes, Liberation Day in it. We'll chuck 3 months free PIQ high IQ tier to them, which is worth about £90. But yeah, so get involved on that when I post it shortly. But Mr. Michael Brown, for now, it's coming up to 9 o'clock. I wish you a very good day. I wish all of our listeners a very profitable trading day if you are trading. And remember, in the wise words of our friend Paul, remember to factor in the fuckery. And we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.